Welcome to part 3 of When Strangers Feed You. If you've missed parts 1 and 2, you can find them in the playlist here on my YouTube channel. This is part 3 of 4. Part 4 will be going up next week, but for today, I hope you enjoy part 3. Cold. I was cold. The surface below me was firm and cool, but not like ground. Not like anything I'd felt before. It was unnatural. I crouched behind something white and shiny. My mind could not make sense of what it was. Occasionally it moaned as though alive, and I heard the movement of water within it. But I had explored it, and there was no water to be seen. It was just hardness and cold whiteness, a series of curves and flat surfaces, a tangible obfuscation. I cowered behind it, the only shelter, yet even within its shadow I felt exposed. My senses were blazing, afire from the strange lights above me, which seared my eyes but gave no heat to the small space. The lights, like the rest of the place, were unnatural and cold. There was a pane of glass, but it led nowhere. No glimpse of the outside world, only my own terrified reflection. There was a door, but it led in, not out. Into their den, into the danger, into where she awaited. There was no other exit. Strange cats sniffed outside the door, but there was something wrong about them. They offered no help. They simply sat outside and waited, their silence urging me to submit. Their base sense whispered of safety, but their fur stank of human flesh. I could not trust them. They were like empty shells, hollows of what once was, and the smell of them chilled me to my bones. I was trapped. I was a prisoner. I was doomed. How did I come to be in this place? That story requires some telling. Steel yourself, for this is the black moment of my story, the part where horrors become reality, the part where everything ill-fated Colina set in motion comes to fruition and my life forever changes. Prepare yourself for this, the story of my abduction. It was a humid, cool night, and I was out prowling for food. For some time now, food has appeared in small bowls outside some of the human dwellings. I avoided the one near the dwelling from which Colina had escaped. Nothing could have lured me near that place. But another dwelling a street over also put out bowls. Each night I prowled past them and their scent teased me, making my mouth water. At first, I suspected these bowls were a trap of some kind and steered far away from them. Over time, however, I saw others, braver or maybe simply less cautious than I, partake of them with no ill effect. After a few weeks of this, I grew restless. Why was I spending my nights on the hunt, often coming back with empty paws and belly, when these other cats grew fat on easy meals? And so I grew lax in my caution. I approached, but never the one near Colina's humans. I ate from the bowls. Nothing bad happened, so I came back the next night, and the next, all that had been before Colina. But I, on this night, had no inkling yet of just how much Colina had changed things. So I prowled, I came, and I ate. Night after night, this was my way. And then she came. The large female came alone this time, no small one with her. She caught me by surprise, my face buried in dry nuggets of food. How had she found me? She nearly caught me, but I slipped her grasp and fled, cursing myself for my carelessness. I ran. She chased. I hid beneath the box machines, and she shone that blazing beam beneath them, searing my eyes. I ran. She chased. I ran some more. Finally, she gave up. She departed, back toward the human dwelling from which Colina had first escaped. I sank down onto my belly beneath the box machine where I'd been hiding and waited. The moon shifted. Box machines drove past. Footsteps came and went, but none disturbed me. Finally, it fell silent. The area was clear of humans. I crept out, my belly growling for the rest of my interrupted meal. I slunk toward the row of houses where the food bowls had been. There was no one in sight. Perhaps the human had spotted me by chance. This one with the strange vendetta for me. Surely she was gone now. I had outwaited her. I approached the dwelling, its porch still lit by the small roof eye they kept glowing well into the night. The food bowl was still there, still full, and they had even added something to it, a moist, meaty substance that brought drool running down my chin. I moved toward it almost against my will, drawn by its savory fragrance. The bowl had changed positions. It was inside some kind of box now, and I had to creep inside to reach the bowl. My fur twinged a bit at having to squeeze into such close quarters, but the smell pulled at me and my stomach twisted with hunger. How could I resist it? I crawled in. I realized my mistake as the opening clanged shut. I was trapped. The door to the human dwelling opened and another human female stepped out, a different one, holding a small box to her ear. "She's in the trap," she said to the box. "You can come get her." I cowered as far back into the box as I could go, feeling for any opening, anything, any way of escape. There was none. The human female came for me. They dumped me from the metal box into another one that smelled of other cats. I tried to resist. I clawed desperately, but there was no use. They simply tipped one box into the other, and there was nothing on which my claws could grip. I slid helplessly, a toy at their mercy. I heard the human female thank the other, and again I heard that wretched name, Colina. "I think it could be her," she said. I'm not Colina," I howled, but they did not answer me. I was jostled and bumped down the street in the arms of the human female, and then I felt the air shift. Strange smells assaulted my nose, and I sensed 2 other cats, maybe a third, a canine, and humans. Terror filled me as I realized where I was. She had taken me in. I was inside the human house. And this brings me to where I began the story a chapter ago. I was set loose into a room with strange hard floor and growling cold white fixtures. There were 2 of these large white fixtures, one like a big box, and the other like a strange seat, the kind I had seen humans sit on, but with an opening atop it. Inside it there was water moving, like a stream. I heard it shifting, but when I leaned my face into it for a drink, I pulled back. It smelled wrong. The human had left me a bowl of water and another of dry food. Nothing like the sweet, meaty substance that entrapped me. And some kind of strange box filled with tiny bits of gravel. I thought the human meant for me to deposit my excrement in this box. I would not. Time passes. My bladder urged toward bursting, and I was forced to demean myself by relieving it on a small square of fuzzy cloth near the large white fixture. The cloth did not absorb it all, and the fluid ran toward me, soiling my paws. I was humiliated to be in such conditions, but at least I retained the dignity of not depositing my waste in the box the human had placed. I could only imagine what use she would have for collecting my urine in such a receptacle. At least I was spared that indignity by instead going on the floor. I was sitting in my own urine, but I still had my pride. For the moment. The human returned. She held out the small box device in her hand, and a flashing light blinded me. I heard a click. Again she did this, and I could only cower behind the smaller white fixture. There was nowhere to really hide. And then she grabbed me. I resisted at first, preparing to claw. But then her hand stroked down my back, and terror filled me as my body responded to her touch involuntarily. I felt my back curve up toward her hand, my head press into her palm. What sorcery was this? My heart hammered as I forced myself to go stiff, slowly pulling away from her grasp. She held me firm. She gripped my sides with both hands, and then, I can hardly speak it, she flipped me over. I was completely and utterly exposed. "Yep, it's a female," she spoke into the small box device, holding me with one arm. I squirmed and writhed, and, at last, I managed to slip from her grasp. I dashed for cover through a doorway and under the nearest thing, a large, strange square elevated from the floor. I dove for it. But before I was fully under, her arms were around my legs. I clawed the floor desperately as she dragged me back out. I had a strange moment of curiosity as I realized that her hands were gentle around me even as she captured me. It was as if she wanted to ensure my safety, probably so that she could torture me and kill me later. I had heard of such things. It was like taking pleasure in the hunt. Hunting must be a challenge. You do not want it over too quickly. This thought sent a shock of fear through me, and panic seized me again. But then she was dropping me. I was back in the small, cold room with the bowls and the gravel box and the cold white fixture that sounded of water. The human backed away, cooing something that almost seemed meant to comfort me. The door shut. I was alone again and trapped. For days I was in this room. I could see the day-eye glowing through a strange square in the window, and could see the darkness when it fell at night. The human kept me supplied with water and food, and even cleaned my excrement from the floor. She did not bother my hiding place while doing so, nor did she try to grab me again. Daily she entered and stepped behind a strange fabric wall into the large white fixture, and I heard the sound of rain. I did not understand it, and I certainly did not go near. I cowered behind the smaller white fixture and waited until she left, water dripping from her as she went. She left quickly, and though she sometimes spoke words that seemed directed toward me, she did not force me from my hiding place. For that I was grateful, though I could only guess what horrors she must have been preparing for me, the torture for which she was saving me. Days and nights came and went. I lost count how many. And then, a new voice. The door opened, and a female entered. A new one. She crouched down. She stared at me. "Aw, she's cute," she said, her eyes on mine, and then her voice fell. "But it's not her." "Oh," said the other human. "I'm sorry. We'll keep looking. We'll find her. But I guess that means that this poor cat—" They laughed, but it was almost sad. They both gazed at me in my hiding place. What demented creatures were these to laugh at such a creature? I was demeaned, living in my own filth and trapped in a room of horrors. And then her hands were coming for me. The first human, the one who had already imprisoned and debased me. She grabbed me, and I tensed. I curled around myself tightly, petrified, as her arms carried me toward unknown tortures. She opened a door and swung me downward toward the ground? My mind struggled to make sense of it. I was outside suddenly, squinting my eyes in the light of the day-eye. I felt my paws touch ground, and the human murmured, "There you go." And then she released me. Her hand slid off of me, and I think she even took a step back. But I was not sure, because I was running like my life depended on it, because surely it did. I was thanking my luck and whatever blessed insanity led her to set me down for that instant, and I was giving no chance that she would ever grab me again. I ran. I did not pay attention to where I was running. I only knew that I was running away. Away from the humans, away from that house, away from Colina and everything related to her. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs gave out. Then I collapsed beneath a hedge and looked around, frantic. I panted, my heart hammering. Had they followed? Were they close? And at the same time, my mind chanted, "I am free. Can it be true? I am free." I watched for what seemed like hours, my legs poised to run again, but no one came. Eventually, exhaustion overtook me, and I sank into a deep sleep. I had learned my lesson. Never again would I stray toward the porch with its savory food smells. Never again would I set paw on the street from which Colina fled. I still did not know why the humans set me free, but I intended to give them no opportunity to capture me again. And yet, I could not go far. The walls of our realm limited my range, and I had already sacrificed much to be allowed to sleep and hunt within the back area under the Tom's control. I was too close for comfort to the house in which they had held me captive, but short of going outside the walls, where the dangers rivaled that of the humans themselves, I could put no more distance between me and that horrid place. And so I settled into the routine of prowling the edges of the area, scavenging for roaches and scraps and whatever sickly prey was too slow or weak to flee the area. I could not hunt the larger, stronger, big-tailed rat beasts. They gathered in the trees close to the house where Colina's humans lived. The humans now knew I was not Colina, I believed, but I could not dare to hope that meant I was safe from them. I was half-starved, but not desperate enough to wander near that place again. I was not sure I would ever be. It was an empty life, confined to the back walls, living on scraps and existing in the shadows. The other cats mocked me. They saw me degrade myself. I, who once was a leader of my own portion of this realm, now bringing small sacrifices to the Tom so that he would allow me to stay in his domain. I was humiliated. I was losing weight and my fur was dull from the poor diet. But I was alive, and I was free of the humans. Or so I thought. There was a large metal box at the edge of the Tom's domain, larger than a box machine yet smaller than a human house. I believed it must have been a leader to them, a box god that somehow reigned over them, as the humans seemed to worship it, bringing offerings to it bags at a time, food, papers, whatever items they could spare. It didn't seem alive. There was no life warmth, no heartbeat, and yet they treated it like a Tom, dropping sacrifices into its gaping mouth every few days, sometimes daily. I kept my distance from it, knowing that humans frequented it. But it was the border to the Tom's domain, and sometimes I had to stray near it to hunt, as the mice and roaches gathered near it, stealing bits of the humans' offerings. There was a small section of human houses near this large metal box god, so my ventures near to it were never without risk. I limited them to the darkness of the night, no matter how angrily my stomach growled beneath the day eye, knowing that even with the thin tree lights illuminating the surrounding area, nighttime was still better than daytime when hoping to escape human notice. That day, I had been hungrier than usual, the Tom having demanded the majority of my meager hunt of roaches and a youngling bird. I waited eagerly for the day eye to slip down past the edge of the world and for the night eye to take its place, the thin tree lights flicking on all around the area as it did so. And then I crept out from my hiding place in the bushes, doing my best to stay in the shadows as the desperation of hunger drove me toward the metal box god, toward the pool of light on the street. I was close, at the edge of the shadows. I could get no closer without stepping into the thin tree's glow and revealing myself. I peered out from beneath my hedge. No humans were in sight. I took a breath, feeling my muscles coil in, and ran for it. My paws patted the ground silently, and in seconds I was there. I slipped under the protective fence around the metal box god and breathed a sigh of relief. The humans only opened those gates when they were there to deliver an offering, and I would hear their heavy steps approaching long before they were upon me. For the moment, I was hidden. I felt safe. I began to sniff around at the edges of the box god, knowing better than to climb up into it. We cats all knew the story mother cats told their kittens about how the box god swallows up any cat that ventures into its gaping mouth, the smooth sides of its maw making it impossible to climb out or escape. One cat from our realm once grew mad enough from hunger to attempt it, and we heard his panicked yowls for hours, unable to escape, and none of us willing to go in after him, until a gigantic box machine arrived and with huge metal claws lifted the entire box god and upended its contents into a humongous metal container. We could only assume that it was an even higher up box god, coming to claim a portion of the smaller one's offerings. But when the large box machine returned the box god to its place on the street, it clanged with hollowness as it was set down. It had been emptied. Its contents vanished into the huge box machine, which then drove away, and the mad cat was never seen again. I knew the danger, and so I did not venture up to its mouth, even though the smells within it nearly intoxicated me, food smells of all kinds, some rotting and some fresh, but all edible, all nourishment. I would have taken any of them gladly were it not a trap, a path to certain death. Instead, I sniffed around the edges of the box god's base, knowing that was where the roaches hide, and resigning myself to filling my belly with their squirming, crunchy bodies yet again. They were not my favorite, but they were food, and I was not picky enough to let myself starve. I was mid-crunch through one of their writhing bodies when I heard footsteps. I leaped to my paws, not even caring as the severed creature fell from my mouth, and dashed for cover. The gate around the box god dragged open and someone entered. It was a human female, one I had seen before along these houses near the box god. I huddled in the box god's shadow, hoping my black fur would conceal my presence within the darkness. I held my breath. The woman tossed a large bag of offerings into the box god's gaping mouth, and I heard it cling down into the box god's metallic stomach. Then she left, shutting the large gate behind her. I sagged with relief. She did not see me. Then I heard her voice. Yeah, I saw your flyer about the missing cat. I tensed. Who was she talking to? There was no one nearby, no voice answering her. I peeked out beneath the bottom of the gate. The woman was holding one of those small boxes to her ear, speaking to it. Uh-huh, she said. I just saw her down here by the dumpster. I scrambled backwards, feeling suddenly exposed, although the gates were hiding me. Yeah, all black, with a bit of white on the chest, big yellow eyes, just like the picture. Panic seized me. I am not Colina, I'm not Colina, the thoughts pounded in my blood. Would they never leave me be? Would I never be free of them, of her, that wretched Colina? Where was she now, the hard-sought escapee? Did she fall prey to the dangers outside the walls, or was she somewhere safe, enjoying her freedom while I suffered in her place? Yeah, you might want to come down and catch her before she runs off again. My blood turned to ice, and I was running, tail tucked, straight out into the pool of light and then beyond it, farther, farther, not daring to stop until I had reached the farthest edge of our domain, until I was cowered, shivering, against the wall that borders the vastness of outside, and even considering going beyond it into the unknown. I was not safe here, not so long as Colina was free. And suddenly, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I had to find Colina. Thank you for listening to Part 3 of When Strangers Feed You. Part 4 will be going up next week. You can also read this story and over a dozen other stories in my subscriber freebie collection, available to those who sign up for my newsletter. Just go to ccrawfordwriting.com/subscribe. You can also get exclusive stories, early access chapters to my books in progress, sneak peeks, and more on my Patreon, patreon.com/ccrawfordwriting. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you in a future video.